Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Nothing in this world is harder than speaking the truth. Nothing easier than flattery, which is why the financial news hails Jamie Dimon, for example, as a hero, just having a ball rescuing the financial system he helped destroy, while the truth is, according to David Dayen of Salon magazine, JP Morgan CEO just violated a federal statute carrying a prison sentence. But will the punishment fit the crime? Stacy Herbert.
Max, yes, I think this was the liberal media in America, their kind of miracle on Park Avenue. They were fantasizing before Christmas. Jamie Dimon's perp walk, why it could be this year's Christmas miracle. So even putting aside the rap sheet of crimes committed by JP Morgan Chase over the past several years, for which its CEO can be said to be ultimately responsible, just a week ago, Jamie Dimon explicitly violated a federal statute that carries a prison sentence. That he's a free man today with no fear of prosecution doesn't only speak to our two-tiered system of justice in America, it should color our perceptions of new rules and regulations that supposedly get tough on the financial industry, as we recognize that any law is only as strong as the individuals who enforce them. So, by his own admission, apparently Jamie Dimon violated Section 906 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act.
By his own admission?
Yes.
Yeah, because he's just taunting people. He's just letting them know that he can break the law with impunity. I think it's to impress his kids, maybe, who want to see daddy break the law and get on TV. I mean, it's amusing, isn't it? The banking industry, at the end of the day, is very easy business. It's like a utility business. You're just essentially loaning money out that you're taking in, and you're making a spread on the difference in those two interest rates. That's the banking industry. So to jazz it up, to give a banker like Jamie Dimon some kind of amusing reason to go to work, he breaks the law. I mean, it's the same way kids would rip off the wings off flies, or maybe a serial killer likes to go around killing people and burying them in the backyard, just to break up the monotony of being, a middle-class nincompoop. So Jamie likes to break the law. He's a law-breaking. That's his hobby.
Now remember, right before Christmas, Jamie Dimon and his family were throwing all these balls in the air at their home and having a laugh, and it is like a pillow fight that we see in the regulatory thing. They're just like play fighting. Oh, I'm going to hit Jamie Dimon over the head with a pillow. This is fun. Feathers go flying.
Yeah, it's like a wrecking ball, more like it, just kind of smashing through the economy. The point is that Jamie really just enjoys breaking the law. I mean, that's his hobby. A lot of people collect butterflies. Jamie Dimon breaks the law. That's his hobby. That's what he enjoys doing.
Well, I'd rather have him do that than when you say wrecking ball. It, of course, reminds me of Miley Cyrus sitting on the wrecking ball naked and flying around. I wouldn't want to see Jamie Dimon on a wrecking ball naked.
I didn't see the Miley Cyrus on the wrecking ball. I remember Cher straddling like a 50-millimeter gun, is that it, from on a huge ship. I thought that was pretty impressive. That was a while ago.
I think you're dating yourself.
Cher's
like
still
80.
got it. She still got it, Cher. You know?
Okay, so let's look at this Section 906 that he violated. Section 906 forces corporate CEOs and CFOs, chief financial officers, to add a written certification to every periodic financial statement filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. In the certification, the CEO and CFO must personally attest that the documents submitted to the SEC are accurate, as well as that the corporation has adequate internal controls. That phrase, quote, internal controls, has a very specific meaning, covering the accuracy of all financial reporting, proper risk management, and compliance with all applicable regulations. Under Section 906, if the CEO or CFO knowingly or willfully make false certifications, i.e. they know the SEC filing contains inaccurate information or that the company's internal controls are inadequate, they face fines of up to $5 million or an imprisonment by 20 years. Now, the London Whale, for example, it appears that Jamie Dimon and the CFO knew they were false statements being made in their earnings reports.
Yeah. Well, like we say on this show many times, the laws that they don't apply to bankers in this sense, because they will make the case that they're financially innovating and they're doing something that the laws haven't caught up with yet, that laws need to change. Or if they really get cornered, they're in a place where they might have to go on a perp walk like John Goodfriend did. I think he was the last really major banker during the Salmon Brothers scandal.
You're dating yourself again.
Well, I happen to have seen this on, I'm an historian. I've watched this for many years now. Haven't seen anything since then. And this is not going to happen because they will just crash the market. In other words, they'll crash the market. You know, the NSA has now control, the plunge protection team. They've got the Jamie Dimon and his $90 million billion trillion slush fund. They just crashed the market like they did in 2008 to get, remember when Hank Paulson got the almost $1 trillion extortion money from Congress. They just crashed the market.
Well, speaking of pillow fights, HSBC got hit by a pillow right before Christmas. HSBC gets small fine for terrorist transactions. A major U.S. bank has agreed to settlement for transferring funds on the behalf of financiers for the militant group Hezbollah, the Treasury Department announced on Tuesday, concluding that HSBC's actions were, quote, not the result of willful or reckless conduct. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control accepted a $32,400 settlement from the bank.
Okay, so let's go back to apartheid. Remember, the boycott that broke the spine of apartheid was the Barclays Bank boycott. The people and the pension funds and the institutional business, they were pulling money from Barclays, and Barclays put in motion the end of apartheid through that bank that was seen as underwriting of the regime of apartheid in South Africa. So here you have HSBC in bed with Hezbollah. HSBC, not only do they launder money from Mexican drug cartels, not only do they rip people off on the high street around the world, and here they're not the world's local bank. They're the world's local terrorist financing organization, essentially. So here you have them financing Hezbollah. Where's Israel? Is Israel coming out and saying we're against HSBC financing Hezbollah? No, because they're duplicitous A's. Fill in the rest of the letters.
This is the thing. The U.S. doesn't care. As they point out, the HSBC was also financing Al-Qaeda. So it's about kickbacks. It's about future job prospects. The war on terror is a money spinner, is a huge money earner. That's all they care about. They want it to be financed. Remember, Israel gives weapons to various Islamist forces in order to make sure that their war keeps on going. It's very profitable. But land of the free? America has 25% of the world's prisoners. The United States has about 5% of the world's population and houses about 25% of its prisoners. In large part, that's the result of the war on drugs and long mandatory minimum sentences, but it also reflects America's tendency to criminalize acts that other countries view as civil violations. So all these people in jail for life on drugs charges. That HSBC has admitted to laundering $7 billion in drug money from Mexico. They paid a small fine, $1 billion or so. They're not in prison. Nobody's in prison there.
Well, the American prison population, if they were smart, they would solicit their services to Hezbollah, because apparently HSBC is right there with a big fat bonus check. So like the Wall Street terrorists are seeking huge end-of-the-year bonuses for committing ever greater acts of financial terrorism, the average improperly jailed drug user / somehow connected to a drug crime with or without evidence of being connected to that crime, to really work your way up the American dream, you need to put out your services to an organization like Hezbollah so that HSBC in Israel will give you a big fat bonus check.
So going back to these stories in the United States, we have over and over Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan has committed crime after crime after crime after crime. They've paid dozens of fines this year for various crimes. Well, let's look at what other people are sent away for civil violations for years on end in America. In 2010, The Economist highlighted a case in which 4 Americans were arrested for importing lobster tails in plastic bags rather than in cardboard boxes. That violated a Honduran law, which that country no longer enforces, but because it's still on the books there, it's enforced here in the United States. Quote, the lobstermen had no idea they were breaking the law, yet 3 of them got 8 years apiece. When the article was published 10 years later, 2 of them were still behind bars. 10 years in prison for bringing in lobster tails in plastic bags rather than cardboard boxes. Right. And yet they can't find, as Obama said to the nation, he can't find any reason to arrest and incarcerate Jamie Dimon.
No. Jamie Dimon is breaking the law. His own self-admission. He's begging. See, a guy like Jamie is begging to be imprisoned. Some people, I've had this experience when I worked on Wall Street myself. A lot of people, they beg to be wiped out financially, and my role as a stockbroker is to euthanize their accounts. Jamie Dimon is a guy, he's begging to be euthanized. And that, I think, as a country and as a world, we should get together and and answer his wish. He wants to become one with his maker. He says, look, I broke the law. Please arrest me. I want to go to jail and be abused by hundreds and thousands of inmates in some ungodly way. That's my goal in life. I'm tired of being free. Put me in prison, I beg you. So he breaks more and more laws, but unfortunately the law breaking becomes the basis of the GDP for a country, a kleptocracy like America. And they can't put him in jail because they need him out there breaking the law so they can pay themselves huge bonuses at the end of the year. So he's really in an existential crisis. That's his Christmas wish, but nobody will fill his Christmas wish. Oh, the tragedy of it all.
Now, you mentioned euthanized, and this is in this headline: European boycott of death penalty drugs lowers rates of U.S. executions. European-led boycott of medical drugs used by U.S. corrections departments to execute prisoners is having such an impact that has driven the number of executions to an almost all-time low, a leading authority on the death penalty has concluded. So there were only 39 executions this year, and that's only the second time since 1994 that the number of executions in the United States has been less than 40. And this is because Europe has banned the export to the United States of these drugs that are made here that execute Americans, prisoners in America on the death row. Now, if but for the European Commission, many more Americans would have been executed, maybe for importing, lobster tails in the correct cardboard box, but maybe they didn't put the lid on correctly. Who knows what they would have been executed for?
Well, they don't have the money for the drugs. Maybe they should just let these people roam on their own accord on an elementary school playground. The chances of getting murdered are pretty high. People like to shoot each other over there in America. Just let them go to a school and let them get gunned down like some of these other folks. All right, we got to go. Thanks.
Have fun in the second half, huh?
Yeah, stay tuned for the second half. A lot more. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Scottish businessman Neil Mitchell, a victim of the Royal Bank of Scotland's assault on small and medium-sized businesses. Neil, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure being here.
Just to give a little context here, as we've been reporting on this show, Royal Bank of Scotland, they got into some trouble because they were involved in all kinds of underhanded skullduggery, and the state bailed them out, and now they just continue to do bad things. Talk a little bit about your case.
Well, I took my own company to GRG in...
GRG is?
RBS's Global Restructuring Group.
Okay.
And I took it to them and asked for support because I'd found some accounting irregularities and that we needed to investigate. And that's subsequently been investigated. The SFO have now successfully finished that, and I put 4 people in prison. So I have a reputation for putting people in prison for fraud. In the meantime, within 4 months of asking RBS to support the company, they had assets stripped of cash, assets. They had put the business into administration, and a business that was worth £600 million was sold for 204 to an American vulture fund within 4 months. It was 164 million plus 40 that they hid in a secret escrow account. They also used offshore tax structures. But within 4 months, my shareholders, my bondholders, and I all lost out significantly. What was disgusting about it was that having taken a company that already had some difficulties or some concerns, I thought I was going to get help and support and that it would truly be a business support unit. And instead, they basically took everything else out that was left.
Okay, in this show, we talk about the facts that banks, especially during this post-2008, 2009 bailout period, have engaged in lots of market manipulation and lots of fraud. But this RBS case is really a case that is a specific example of a bank acting in a way that is beyond just making a few accounting errors or doing a little market manipulation. Yep. They're acting as a gangster in the truest sense of the word. They have a subsidiary, their military wing, if you will, this restructuring group. They identify targets, they identify companies, they leg break the companies, they disable the companies, they destable them, then they pick them up for pennies on the dollar. But your case is not just a one-off case. The RBS is involved in many cases. So speak on this.
Well, my initial thought was that I was dealing with 2 rogue managing directors within GRG and their support staff, and 2 partners in Linklater's law firm and 2 partners in KPMG, who I then noticed after my own business that they went from one project to another. And that's always an indication of systemic institutionalized fraud, when you get the same people turning up and applying the same processes to the same types of company. What was really worrying, and this is an important point to make beyond the Tomlinson report, is that these were all large companies, and much larger than mine. And so for 2 years, as I studied my own case and built up my own potential legal claims, I also was studying 11 further case examples. So I began to believe that there was a cookie cutter system in place, to use an Americanism, that it was systemic and institutionalized. In April 2010, I took 2 years worth of investigation and research that had involved 46 people, cost me nearly £4.5 million cash out in a private investigation. And I took it to Stephen Hester directly in April 2010, and I asked him to investigate it, and I asked him to inform the necessary authorities, including the FSA. And for the last 3.5 years, Stephen Hester refused to investigate it. Sir Philip Hampton refused to investigate it. And for 3.5 years, they've put undue effort into avoiding investigating it, with legal threats, harassment, illegal surveillance. And in the meantime, I've continued to investigate. I've worked with various investigative journalists. More recently, I've provided intelligence, case studies, and access to key advisors to Lawrence Tomlinson in his study inside the Department of Business. And I absolutely agree with you. In the last couple of years, I've realised that it isn't a couple of rogue managing directors, that it is institutionalised, it's systemic, it's run absolutely from the top. And although GRG was set up in 1992 as a recovery unit, I genuinely believe that's what it did for the first years. But at some point, I reckon about 2002, 2003, it was changed to profit centre, and they went and they became very good at it, very aggressive, and they've been profiteering ever since. I go beyond using the word gangsters. To me, it's economic terrorism, because if you think that there are 750 to 1,000 businesses in GRG at any time, in any given time of any year, the run rate is huge. And the RBS propaganda machine has been putting out in the last couple of weeks, partly in response to the Tomlinson report, that 90% of businesses that go through GRG have a successful outcome to the loan. If you look at page 171 of the 2012 RBS annual report and accounts, it actually says in their own annual report and accounts that only 6% of companies come out the other end of GRG. So it's a mincer. So having spent...
I'm sorry, it's a what?
It's a mincer. They're basically mincing companies.
Okay,
They're putting them through at the front end. They're grabbing cash. They're taking every form of asset. And essentially what it's about is destroying businesses and therefore jobs and livelihoods. And the criticism that's being meted out to Lawrence Tomlinson about him and his role is one thing. But what's really important is that I have absolutely no doubt, because I've seen the evidence for myself, that he has all the case studies that he says he has. His issue is not a lack of evidence. His issue is that he's overwhelmed by evidence in each and every case.
Okay, hold on a second. So Tomlinson came forward. He was working as a business advisor to the coalition government. I guess he caught the eye of Vince Cable, who gave him some presence in talking about this scandal.
Yep.
And of course, the media, which is compromised in this country and around the world, is trying to maybe attack some of the credibility of some of the folks involved here. Yep. But let's roll back the tape a little bit, because you've got a situation in this country where HSBC was caught laundering money for Mexican drug cartels.
Yep.
They were directly or indirectly responsible for 60,000 murders, many of them decapitations, billions of pounds of money laundering. Now it's come out that they are involved with Hezbollah. They're financing Hezbollah. That's HSBC. Your money at the bank is going into Hezbollah. Not a peep from Israel, by the way. They're just like, oh, it's whatever, Hezbollah. Yep. Okay, so now these banks, RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, who's part of the big four banks in this country, RBS, HSBC, Lloyds, and the other one, they're using these terrorists, you say financial terrorism, against British citizens.
Yeah, well, it's crimes against the British public and crimes against the state, because the consequences are that hundreds and hundreds of British businesses that were viable, and another part of the RBS propaganda is to say that they're all zombies and very distressed. Again, Tomlinson and others are commenting that many of the businesses that are tipped into GRG are long-term, sustainable, profitable, viable businesses. So they're tipping SMEs into GRG, and then they're asset stripping them. One of the things that we need to correct about the Tomlinson report is that he was confined by Vince Cable to talk about SMEs, and he's tended to talk about asset stripping on property. Actually, the reality is that it's every company that's ever gone through GRG, regardless of size, so small, medium, and large, and including some very large publicly listed companies, some large brands, some large retailers and hoteliers, whatever. So it's every type of company, every size of company, and also every type of asset. Because the first thing the bank do when they get their sights on you is they behave as shadow directors. They appoint their own turnaround consultants who you have to pay for, but actually aren't there to turn it around. There is no aspect of turnaround, recovery, restructuring.
Quick question. You mentioned how this seems to be an organized cookie-cutter racket. It's a racketeering, as we would say. It should be prosecuted under anti-racketeering law. You mentioned KPMG, one of the biggest consultants in this country. Very little is talked about the role of the consultants, but are these major consultancies, whether it's Ernst & Young, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, are they in these rackets? Are they equally culpable in the racket?
Well, they're complicit in it because you know, they take the instruction, they do the work, and they get the fees. But also, certainly in my case, they were given double the fees at the end without even invoicing.
Okay. Now, you have described this going on for small companies. We covered this a couple of weeks ago with a hotelier in Portsmouth who had their hotel ripped away and destroyed. But in your case, I mean, you're classified maybe as a small to medium enterprise, but you've spent millions of your own money in pursuit of justice. And so for a lot of people, that's not a small business. That's a little bit bigger than a small business. So you're spending millions of dollars of your own money. So, and what's the go forward here? Where are you set to spend more on this?
The go forward is that I've already, long before Vince Cable a few weeks ago, much earlier this year, in May this year, I provided a dossier of evidence and a full report to the Commander of City of London Police, to the Head of Intelligence at the SFO,
a serious fraud office.
Serious fraud office, to the Financial Conduct Authority. I liaised with the Department of Business, and in the last weeks I've been acting as an advisor and protected person by HMRC, because I've now been able to show Her Majesty's Revenue Customs that actually RBS have been orchestrating frauds against the state, crimes against the state, whereby they have been instructing or stopping British businesses paying tax payments due to HMRC. The last I heard in the last week from HMRC is they reckon that this has created a tax gap to Her Majesty's Treasury of billions, and they are about to launch a national investigation into RBS's conduct in the whole tax element of this. So my intention here is to, of course, seek compensation that's still due to me for my family, but since I met with Sir Philip Hampton twice in the last year, the mission has become the current chairman of RBS, who I've been going at head-to-head for 3.5 years, and has known about it for that time and has avoided investigating it. I've now had confirmation from the FCA that he nor anyone else in RBS fulfilled their regulatory obligations to report this to the Financial Conduct Authority, which they are legally obliged to do. That's the extent of the cover-up. So I've taken it to all the right and proper criminal authorities. My mission is to ensure that GRG is stopped, that effectively it's closed down, to warn the 1,000 companies that are already in GRG as to what is being done to them, and to, by getting media attention to this, is alert companies that have been destroyed at the hands of RBS in the last years to seek a compensation. And one of the things that I've worked on in the last months is to set up an RBS GRG business action group to actually support UK.
How do people
victims.
find information about that?
You go on the website, look up RBS GRG Business Action Group, and you'll see all the details of the support and also of our intended group legal action. One of the things that Vince Cable hasn't been telling the nation in the last couple of weeks, when asked by media folks like yourself, is what is the official estimate by the government on compensatory damages? And the initial estimate as of August this year was 5 to 15 billion.
We got to cut it right there. 5 to 15 billion, of course, in this age of austerity, where they're throwing people out of their homes because they claim they have no money, and they don't go after the Hezbollah of the UK banking sector, Royal Bank of Scotland.
Yep.
All right. Well, I got to cut it off there. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Neil Mitchell, a whistleblower on the anti-SME practices of RBS. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.